October 1944. An American P-51 pilot, a veteran ace, is engaging a German fighter. He is the king of the sky. He is fast, powerful, and he has never been beaten. Suddenly, something flashes past him. He doesn't understand. It's moving 100, maybe 150 miles per hour faster than he is. He banks, and he sees it. It has no propeller. It has no engine. It has flames coming out of its wings. At that exact same moment, a neighborhood in London simply vanishes. There was no warning, no air raid siren, no drone of bombers, just a flash, a thunderclap, a hole in the sky, followed by a hole in the ground. The German V-2, the world's first ballistic missile, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. Nazi Germany had weapons from 1960 in 1944. They had jets, they had rocket planes, they had guided missiles, they had cruise missiles on the drawing board. They had the future. So, why did they lose? Why did these technological, futuristic miracles fail to stop the Allied invasion? Why did these wonder weapons, Wunderwaffen, turn out to be a complete and catastrophic failure?
Let's be absolutely clear. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was a masterpiece. It was not a failure as an airplane. It was, quite possibly, the most brilliant piece of aeronautical engineering of the entire war. When Allied pilots first encountered it, they thought the laws of physics had been broken. Your P-51 Mustang, the Cadillac of the skies, had a top speed of 440 miles per hour. The Me-262, 540 miles per hour. It was 100 miles per hour faster. It wasn't just a gap, it was a different dimension of speed. An American pilot in a Mustang could not catch a Messerschmitt Me-262. He could not run away from a Messerschmitt Me-262. If a jet pilot decided to fight, you had to fight. And its weapons? The Mustang had 6.5 caliber machine guns. The Me-262 had 4 30mm cannons. It fired shells the size of your thumb. It was a flying anti-aircraft gun. It didn't just shoot down a B-17 bomber, it deleted it. 1, maybe 2 seconds of fire and a flying fortress would be cut in half. So, here is the first why. Why did this miracle weapon fail? The first reason is this man. When Adolf Hitler was first shown the Messerschmitt Me-262 in 1943, he didn't see a fighter, he saw a bomber. He was obsessed with vengeance. He wanted a Schnellbomber, a fast bomber that could fly to England uninterceptable and drop bombs. The engineers were horrified. The fighter generals, like Adolf Galland, begged him. They said, "Führer, this is our only chance. This is the air defense weapon that can stop the B-17s." Hitler refused. He ordered the Me-262 to be redesigned as a bomber. It was insanity. It was like taking a Formula One race car and demanding it be rebuilt to plow a field. The engineers were forced to add bomb racks, to strengthen the landing gear. It ruined the aerodynamics. It made the plane unstable. This political interference didn't just delay the Me-262, it crippled it. It wasted months, priceless, irreplaceable months. By the time Hitler finally relented and allowed it to be built as a fighter, it was late 1944. The Allies were already in France. But Hitler's meddling wasn't even the biggest reason it failed. The real failure was in its heart. The Jumo 004 jet engine, a revolution and a disaster. To build a jet engine, you need heat-resistant alloys. You need nickel, you need cobalt, you need tungsten. By 1943, Germany had none of these. The Allies had bombed their factories. Their supply lines were cut. So the German engineers, brilliant as they were forced to build these revolutionary engines out of low-grade steel, out of garbage. And the results were terrifying. The life of a Jumo 004 engine, not 1,000 hours, not 500 hours, not even 50 hours. The average service life of a German jet engine was 10 to 20 hours, if you were lucky. Most pilots flew in constant terror of their own engines. If you pushed the throttle too fast, the engine flamed out. If you pushed it too slowly, the engine flamed out. They would just explode in midair. More Messerschmitt Me-262s were lost to engine failure and training accidents than were ever lost to Allied fighters.
So, you have a miracle plane that was delayed by politics and built with engines that don't work. But it gets worse. Let's talk about logistics. A war is not won by weapons, it is won by logistics. This is the reality of the German Wonder Weapon program, a 540-mile-per-hour jet fighter being refueled by a horse. The Me-262 drank a special synthetic fuel, J2, in a nation that had no oil. The Allies had bombed their synthetic fuel plants into dust. There were entire wings of brand new jets sitting useless because there was no fuel to fly them. And then there's the runway. Your P-51 Mustang can take off from a grass field. Your Me-262, with its fragile, primitive jet engines, needed a long, perfect concrete runway. And what do you think the Allies were bombing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? The Allies knew. The Me-262 was invincible at 30,000 feet, but it was a sitting duck on the ground. And the Allied pilots, they weren't stupid. They knew they couldn't dogfight the jet. So, they didn't. This was the real twist, the real tactic. Allied aces like Chuck Yeager became jet busters by not fighting them. They would camp. They would circle high above the German jet airfields and just wait. Why? Because the Me-262 was most vulnerable when it was landing or taking off. Its engines were slow to respond. The pilot had to be gentle. He was low. He was slow. He couldn't maneuver. The P-51s would just dive on them as they were helplessly trying to touch down. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. But in the end, the answer to why is a simple math problem. The Germans managed to build about 1,400 Me-262s. Of those, maybe 300 ever saw combat. The Allies were building 5,000 fighters every month. The Me-262 wasn't a war winner. It was a drop in the ocean. It was too little, too late. But if the Me-262 jet was a strategic mistake, then the V-2 rocket was strategic insanity. This was the Aggregat 4, the Vengeance Weapon 2, the first ballistic missile in human history, the father of the Apollo and the Soyuz rockets. It was a 46-foot-tall spaceship. It flew at Mach 5. It traveled 60 miles straight up to the edge of space before falling faster than the speed of sound. It was unstoppable. You could not see it coming. You could not hear it coming. You could not intercept it. It was the perfect terror weapon. And it was a complete and total failure. Why? Let's start with this. This is the most shocking secret of the wonder weapons. The German V-2 rocket program
cost an estimated $3 billion. The American Manhattan Project, the entire atomic bomb program, cost $2 billion. You are hearing that correctly. Germany, a nation being bombed into the Stone Age, spent more money on the V-2 rocket than America spent on inventing the atomic bomb. What did they get for that price? This $3 billion weapon carried a single 2,000-pound warhead, the exact same standard warhead that a $100,000 regular bomber could drop by the dozen. Now let's talk about accuracy. It was horrifically inaccurate. It was literally a shotgun aimed at a city. They could not aim for a factory. They could not aim for a bridge. They could not aim for a port. All they could do was aim for London. The V-2 killed an estimated 9,000 civilians. It was a human tragedy. But as a war weapon, it did nothing. It did not destroy a single factory. It did not stop a single convoy. It did not kill a single soldier in the field. It did not change anything. It just cost more than the bomb that ended the war.
Let's put this in perspective. Let's talk about cost versus effect. This was the V-2's ugly cousin, the V-1, the buzz bomb. This was a cheap pulse jet. It was a flying lawnmower with a bomb. And this was a smarter terror weapon. Why? Because it was cheap and it was slow. Slow made it terrifying. You could hear it coming. And slow forced the Allies to react. The Allies had to divert thousands of fighter planes and anti-aircraft guns to the coast just to stop the V-1s. It was a drain on the Allied war effort. The V-2 was so expensive, it drained Germany, and it was so fast, you couldn't stop it, which meant the Allies didn't even try. There was no defense, so the Allies just didn't waste a single plane trying. They just kept bombing Germany. And this is the real ultimate answer to why. Germany was in a war of attrition, a war of production. The Allies were burying them in mathematics, in 10,000 Sherman tanks, in 20,000 T-34 tanks, in 300,000 airplanes. Germany was losing because they could not compete with this production. They had two choices. Choice A, use every last bit of steel, fuel, and engineering to build proven, cheap, effective weapons, like the Me-109 fighter or the Panzer IV tank. Choice B, waste all of it on magic bullets, on superweapons that might, maybe, change the war. They chose B. The steel used to build 3,000 useless V-2 rockets was enough to build 24,000 Panzer tanks. They didn't need a wonder weapon. They needed tanks. They needed fighters. They needed fuel. And they wasted all of it. So, why did Germany's wonder weapons fail? The answer is the most tragic irony of the war. They didn't fail, technically. They worked. The M262 flew. The V-2 launched. They were miracles of engineering. They failed strategically. They were brilliant, genius-level solutions to the wrong problems. You cannot win a war of industrial production by building a few expensive toys.
You cannot stop an avalanche of 10,000 tanks by launching a rocket at a civilian neighborhood. The wonder weapons weren't weapons. They were delusions. They were the last desperate gamble of a regime that had stopped believing in logic and started believing in magic. And the Allies? They didn't need magic. They just had mathematics.